Perfect. Yeah, thanks, Daniel, for making time to speak to me again. It's been a few months since the big announcement, and I think you have some interesting things coming up in East Africa. So, just like let's actually take it from there. Tell how's it been since your last trades? How's life changed? How's running Wasoko changed since then?
Yeah, absolutely. No, it's been a very busy year. Lots of exciting things happening. Of course, Wasoko has continued to grow during this time. I think despite some of the slowdown in global tech markets, otherwise we successfully expanded to the new markets in Francophone West Africa, into Cote d'Ivoire, as well as Senegal. Those have actually grown quite well, and we're very excited about the potential there. We're even planning a few additional country launches, as we speak. So, definitely no slowdown on the Wasoko side. I think one of the areas where we've also definitely continue to grow as well, and this is maybe a little bit against the trend, is in terms of hiring and the team. So we've continued to hire quite a number of people, especially on the tech side, and I think that actually gets to some of these interesting initiatives that we've been working on, and explains where I am today, which is in sunny Zanzibar. I think as we have been kind of coming out of the pandemic, one of the things that I've been really focused on, and this is once again, I think a little bit against the grain to some degree, is recognizing that while remote work has significant benefits in terms of the additional flexibility, there are also drawbacks and there are challenges with it. I think especially when it comes to building an innovative tech company, especially on a continent as diverse and large as Africa, not having your tech people on the ground with users, seeing the challenges and responding to that with new ideas, with new products day to day, is actually a big drawback. And so for us, this is something that I actually identified a few months back, and I started thinking about how can we really tackle this particular challenge. And we just kind of organically through the pandemic ended up with tech workers all over the place. We had our kind of core team of engineers and product managers in Kenya that we've always had, but we ended up actually bringing on a number of people in India as well, and then even in Europe and a few other places, just through the kind of remote working environment. But as I said, I recognize some of the challenges with that setup, and I started thinking about if there potentially could be an opportunity to kind of reverse that trend and actually open a global tech office where we could bring together as many of these people as possible in a location that would actually be supportive of that type of hub being set up to facilitate the collaboration and the tech development. And this was a very interesting process, because I think we recognized some of the challenges in our existing markets with trying to make this happen. So I think and by no means is this unique, but it is just astounding to me, the kind of restrictions that African countries place on each other when it comes to getting visas and issuing work permits and stuff like that. And so you're trying to build a Pan-African company where you're bringing together talent from across the continent, but the country where you're based, doesn't want to give visas to those guys, and you try to go somewhere else and they don't give visas there. And I think if you look at the major markets, this is a challenge in all of them from what I've seen. Nigeria, Kenya, South Africa, and to me this is a insane situation because you have definitely not enough tech workers in any of these markets to meet the demand from the local startups and tech companies that are there. But even beyond it, the opportunity to actually bring in these highly skilled professionals who make significant salaries, which could then be paid into the local tax base, whether it's on income tax and also just on the local spending power and how that would flow through in terms of VAT and everything else. But then also the ability to actually then transfer and learn from each other in terms of having world-class professionals working alongside the local tech workers. That's a huge opportunity to build up the local base as well. But I think the final thing that just makes this whole system just basically meaningless is that in the remote working environment, right, I can hire the engineer sitting in India, sitting in Germany, sitting in US, wherever, and they can work for Wasoko or whatever company. So it's not like I think that the traditional old school mindset is if you bring this worker in to Nigeria or to Kenya, you're taking a job from a Kenyan or Nigerian. It's like, no, they're already working for us. Like they already work for us, right? So in fact, the only impact is upside for you as a government, because now instead of them paying their income tax to India or to Germany, they can now pay it to Kenya, or they can pay it to Nigeria or whoever else. And also, as I said, the benefit to having that highly skilled person now locally working alongside the other local talent. So as I said, I just I've struggled with that concept, and I think in a lot of cases this is exactly the force that results in companies opening their Africa offices or even moving their entire headquarters to places like Dubai or London. And to me, that's just this is a ridiculous situation where now you have African operations and offices being run from outside the continent, right? And it just and as I said, it's just I think a pure kind of lost opportunity and income from the individual country perspective. Individual African countries should be fighting to attract regional and global offices, not pushing them away. And so I think this kind of situation was what I was struggling with, where I wanted to build up a Pan-African global tech hub for us as Wasoko, but at least in our existing markets didn't see a lot of openness to that concept. And so from there, basically, I took a step back and I was just thinking, okay, if we want to open this, global hub and be able to attract top talent from across the continent.
Sorry, Daniel, yeah. Before we get into the hub sure. And Tanzania itself, I mean, it's pretty interesting, and it seems very obvious as well that if you already have talent that's working for you, let them come and spend more money within the country, pay, I don't know, taxes locally and VAT as well. But I guess it takes a lot of conversations with authorities from your side and anybody who's running a tech company with remote workers to convince governments to do it. But also the thing you said at the beginning about the remote work, because it seems to be, hey, this is very obvious, like, and we do have conversations about as well, saying, hey, we have cheap tech workers in India who can work in the US, take us. But the fact that you also sometimes need to be on the ground and understand the problem is one of those components that we don't necessarily think about unless you are operating on the ground as you are. So with that, I guess that was a very good introduction to the problem. And I guess, and the hub is part of the solution to that, right? So, but also like for anybody who doesn't know Wasoko, just tell, kind of like explain what you guys do and how you plan to solve
of
those
course.
issues you raised?
Yeah, of course. So Wasoko is an e-commerce company focused on supplying mom and pop stores across Africa. And so basically what we do is help them to order and restock for all the goods that they sell in their store, things like rice, soap, toilet paper, you name it, as well as also provide them with access to financing through specifically order now, pay later options as well to help them grow and address the working capital challenges that many of them have. So right now, Wasoko is active across 6 countries: Kenya, Tanzania, Rwanda, Uganda, Cote d'Ivoire, and Senegal, and supplies over 75,000 mom and pop stores across these markets.
Okay, increased that by 25K since the last time we talked.
Yeah, exactly.
That's a big leap. Yep. And for anybody who doesn't know, like Wasoko raised 125 earlier this year. In March, valued at 600, which I guess the value has probably changed now. It's probably much higher. So tell me about the hub, and I don't yet see how that solves.
Yeah, connecting to the problem. Yes, absolutely. So we had this core issue, which is we wanted to bring our global, widely dispersed tech workers together as much as possible in Africa, close to as close to our customers as possible, and so that we could be and in an enabling environment where we were welcomed, where we were given the resources and everything to have a successful tech office. And so I kind of started this off first principles, just stepping back and saying, if we could open a tech office anywhere in our regions, in our neighborhood, where would we ideally want to do that? And of course, when it comes to top destinations in East Africa, I believe Zanzibar is probably the most recognized and perhaps most visited as well. And of course, I'd visited several times over the years just on holiday. Always enjoyed it, and I think just the global name recognition as well. You talk to folks in India, Germany, US. Everybody has this image of the tropical island and overall nice, lovely place to be. And so that just kind of was one of the top places that came to mind. And from there, I reached out to some contacts, given we already do business in mainland Tanzania, and just started to inquire about, whether this type of, tech initiative could in fact be something that the government was open to. And, I've actually seen just through our business on the mainland that, Tanzania has actually transformed dramatically in a positive direction in terms of business environment since Samia Hassan has taken over as president, and we've seen overall just the regulation openness of the administration to be very high. But then the interesting thing is that Zanzibar is in fact an autonomous region within Tanzania, and they have in fact their own government. They have their own ministers, they have their own president, and they control their own legislation too, which has significant differences and realities from what you see otherwise. So, for example, in Zanzibar, foreigners can own property, whereas in the mainland you can't. They in fact have a lower VAT here than they have in the mainland, so they have a lot of control over their local policies. So after speaking to some contacts, I was able to be connected, in fact, directly to the minister of Investment and Economic Development in Zanzibar, to kind of discuss what we were looking to do, and in fact, the reception was immediately very positive. the interesting thing is that Zanzibar had already seen an influx of digital nomads over the COVID period. And many people, especially from Europe, who came down to escape the cold and the lockdown winters and work remotely from a beautiful sunny environment. And that was actually something the government had recognized as being a huge positive, because at that time, many other tourists, the mainstream tourists, were not coming through, but these digital nomads were coming. They were staying, for more extended periods, and that was actually a big boost to the economy when it was otherwise, quite limited on the tourism side. And so, when I initially discussed with the minister that, hey, we want to actually, build out a permanent, kind of tech center to bring in, and relocate as many as our workers as possible. He immediately understood the potential of what we were doing. I think what was also exciting was just to see, he's the minister, Mudrik Soraga is, I think, a very progressive, open-minded gentleman. He's young, I believe, only 37. Went to school in the States, and so I think he understands, what the kind of digital world is and the opportunity with it. And yeah, after kind of laying out the points of, look, this is a huge economic opportunity, and he shared actually as well that the government of Zanzibar has, in fact, this kind of long-term economic plan called the Blue Economy, which is basically all about how can they diversify and add in new industries in addition to tourism, while still maintaining and protecting, obviously, the beautiful, island environment. And, the whole idea is, what are the kind of low footprint industries that can be built up? And in fact, ICT was already, part of that plan, just hadn't necessarily been fleshed out, and the right partners hadn't come along. And so, with us kind of coming through with our own idea, I didn't even know about, this kind of master plan previously. It was kind of a perfect fit. And what we realized is that, now is a huge opportunity to actually kind of formalize something to specifically drive that, because, as I said, Zanzibar needs to diversify away from tourism. And they need to find some of these other industries that can thrive in, an island environment where you don't have, a huge amount of space. And, tech is perfect for that, in the sense that, as long as, we have some desks and internet access, we're good to go. And so what we've ended up finalizing on with the government is an official Silicon Zanzibar initiative, whereby we will be, in fact, officially inviting tech companies from across the continent, as well as even beyond, who are looking to do business on it, to relocate to Zanzibar, and as part of that, be able to receive all the work visas for their people that are needed to bring their teams here, as well as other incentives that already exist under the free economic zone programs they have, including a 10-year corporate tax holiday for companies, and a range of other benefits, along with, I think, kind of longer term support to potentially develop policies and legislation that are specifically aimed at tech companies as well. So I think, this is a super exciting initiative. And as I said, if you look at all the other tech ecosystems in the other kind of major tech markets right now in Africa, be it Nigeria, Kenya, South Africa, I think you could say that those tech ecosystems exist despite their governments. In most cases, I think there's been a lot of active interference and opposition. And I think what's super exciting to me, and the reason why I myself have personally moved to Zanzibar already, along with the majority of my tech team, is because we see the potential of having a positive enabling environment and partnership with the government to actually create an African hub for tech, where we know that we'll be able to experiment and try new products and be able to work hand in hand with them to develop out services that we can then, export to the rest of our other markets as a Pan-African company.
I mean, that's pretty interesting. It's not something I would have expected. Zanzibar, the paradise on the East Coast, to be kind of the home of where Africa's tech would be. I mean, I'm slightly jealous that I'm not in sunny Zanzibar right now.
Hey, you're welcome at it. Anytime.
In terms of like two questions on that. In terms of like the cost for you moving people to Zanzibar, does it make sense to have that hub? And then kind of like secondly, who else are you talking to on the continent that is seeing this and saying, hey, this actually makes sense, I'm going to move my people to Zanzibar as well? Who's following you?
Yeah. So in terms of the the economics of it, I mentioned at the beginning of the call this pain point around just the productivity or the struggles with really innovating and collaborating to develop new product and technology with the remote working structure. And we've had myself and the majority of the tech team down here for over a month now. And what's really interesting is we've been measuring the productivity of our people in person, here versus what it was before with the same people in the kind of remote environment. And we've actually seen a difference of close to 3x in the productivity. So we're talking a nearly 200% increase in productivity. If you just look at number of features developed and speed and all that, it's just remarkable. And so I think
Elon Musk is right about pushing his people to go back to the office.
100%. I don't agree with everything he says, but I do think that when it comes to getting work done and just being able to work through problems, as well as specifically come up with new ideas and quickly implement them, there is no replacement for being in a room with a whiteboard and just figuring it out. And I think that's what we've seen, especially you can just break it down, right? If you're running a tech team, and right now your process for developing a new idea is, okay, I have a concept. Let me schedule a Zoom call. Maybe it takes 2-3 days just to get all the right people coordinated on their calendars for the call. You do the call, you explain the initial idea. People say, okay, here's some other things we need to figure out. Okay, everybody, go back for a week, think about it, come back with more details. Okay, next week you come back, you have the general outline now. Okay, fine, we're agreed, good. Let's now hand it over to the developers. And then the developers, they have their sprint cycle every 2 weeks. So maybe you have to wait another week or so for them done. And then literally it's 3-4 weeks before the thing actually gets built. Whereas we've been able to run, hackathons and these kinds of things here, where it's we just literally have, all the right people in the room. We figure out what's the problem, what's the thing that needs to be built, all the details, and boom, it gets coded, done in 24 hours. And it's this kind of thing is just not possible in the remote work environment. And I think that's the reality is I think if you're a big established legacy corporate company, and you have your product, you have your systems, whatever, and you're not really changing that much day to day anymore, then I think you can. I still think probably in-person work is more productive for a number of things, but maybe the trade-off and the flexibility to your workers, because they're more just corporate lifestyles and stuff like that, and they really value the benefits and flexibility and stuff like that. I think maybe you can have an argument about net what is better for your organization, remote or in person. But I think if you're an agile startup or growth stage tech company like we are, that still needs to be innovating and building new products and services for your customer base, then you're losing out a huge amount of productivity and value by having all your people scattered in different places. Because you need to be reacting fast. You need to be reacting fast to your customers, to the market, coming up with new products, because none of us have fully scaled and matured yet. So we're still in this growth phase where we need to be, agile and reactive, in the environment. And I think that's where, we're seeing the huge benefit. And, I think to your point as well, we actually I've just been, informally talking to a lot of my other, CEO friends recently about this. And then now I'm starting to share, ahead of our official announcement next week, what we're actually now doing in Zanzibar. And the interest is actually quite exciting. So in fact, we are going to be hosting Africa growth stage CEO retreat later this year in Zanzibar, to specifically bring everyone here to see what's happening with Silicon Zanzibar, and the opportunity that's here. And we already have RSVPs from some of the biggest tech CEOs on the continent to come do that, which is quite exciting. There are already 2 or 3 other companies that are committed to opening offices, here in Zanzibar as well, which we plan to announce, after the initial launch. I think that, as I said, the combination of a attractive market, but also just a supportive government. I can't emphasize enough how much of a breath of fresh air that is, relative to, anybody else that I've spoken to when it comes to government tech, because the reality is, apart from Zanzibar, I have not had anywhere close to the level of interaction and, support and understanding when it comes to the potential opportunity for tech in Africa. I mean, I think the reality is, if you crunch the numbers, tech is the fastest growing major industry in Africa. There's no other sector that went from $500 million in investment 5 years ago to $5 billion last year. There's no other sector that's had a 10x increase in the amount of investment that it's received. And so back to the point again about, like, I think governments have just not yet woken up to the opportunity and the transformative impact that tech can have on their economies. And as I said, in fact, if anything, they've actively stood in the way of the development of those ecosystems. And the thing that I think they haven't recognized is that, unlike more traditional industries, like where you have a huge physical presence and infrastructure behind them, tech is mobile. So, if you're not providing the right policy environment for us to be, working and innovating in your country, then, I think, the prudent thing to do as a tech leader is to consider, are there other locations that, can be more supportive, for building out the talent and the tech base that you need to, as a Pan-African business. And so, yeah,
it's super interesting. And as I said again, I mean, I'm more shocked that Zanzibar is the one place that you found to be that Silicon on the continent that is doing this. Because some places that would come to mind would be even Kigali and partly now even, I think, Alexandria. And I understand why you're saying like Nigeria and Kenya have more or less played a negative role. I've seen that happening. But it's interesting that Zanzibar is trying to attract, and it makes sense. Like it's a good place for remote, in quotes, remote work. But also, can I just ask you about, or in terms of like the question about talent, has kind of come up as like a key point of conversation, especially for African startups, local startups sometimes, who end up having to lose talent because like Daniel comes with his investment in Texem, or like a big corporation in the US does it. Has it been? How do you like approach the hiring process in itself, and the value getting from the talent for operations on the continent?
Yeah, I mean, look, I think talent is a highly competitive space, and it's especially on the tech side, right? The amount of tech workers that we have in Africa right now is nowhere close to what's needed to meet the demand for it. So kind of by definition, we need to be looking outside as well, and actually bringing people to the continent, which is quite exciting, because I think this is the one area where, instead of having a brain drain, theoretically, we can have actually a brain boost in terms of, bringing, highly talented, highly skilled professionals, in. And as I said, I think that's a net benefit overall to the ecosystem, because, guys locally who otherwise, might not have had the experience to work alongside, world-class engineer or something like that, now get that exposure to do so. I think at the same time, right, we do need to still fight and push back against some of the brain drain, where it's like you have, engineers, developers who, are taking jobs, in the US or Canada or whatever, or even kind of, what I like to call the virtual brain drain, right? Which is like they take jobs with Microsoft, for example, in Nairobi. So they haven't physically moved, but, in terms of the actual work and the tech that they're building, it's not actually for the continent, right? You have somebody who's working on, adjusting the button of the next version of Excel, and this is a brilliant engineer who could be, instead building something transformative, in Kenya to actually help the Kenyan people, right? But he or she instead is, doing some, small adjustment that's mostly going to benefit, bankers in the US or something like that. So I think, that's where I think there's an opportunity to, if we could really improve the working environment for tech workers in Africa, so that they feel welcomed, and in fact tech workers globally feel also welcomed and invited to come to Africa. Then from a company and just African tech ecosystem development perspective, the sky's the limit, obviously, given the amount of investment that's coming in, the sheer amount of opportunities that still remain. There's still, even though tech investment in Africa has grown tremendously, it's still a very small fraction of the overall global tech investment, right? And so, I think, the most limited resource, that any, tech CEO in Africa will tell you right now is on the talent side. We need more talent. We need more people coming in. We want to hire. We're not finding enough, especially on the tech side. And that's where, I want to see where we can level up and increase that quality as quickly as possible, with the right environment to do so.
Yeah.
And that's, by the way, that's where I think a place like Zanzibar is super attractive, and because it has the global name recognition already, we can talk to developers, in Germany, in India, in the US, but also, in Nigeria and in Morocco or wherever else, and say, hey, like, why do you want to stay in Lagos, where you have these, special forces police who are like, shaking you down and, stealing your laptops and accusing you of being, a digital thief, when you can just like come actually focus in a place that, is open and friendly and wants you here, as a tech worker, right? So I think these are the kinds of things that, if we have at least one place in Africa that can really lead the way in doing this, then, my hope is that, every country across Africa adopts these policies that Zanzibar has, because that's fundamentally what's going to really transform things. And you want to have that competition to attract and build out as enabling a tech environment as possible. But you have to get started somewhere. And I think, as I said, Zanzibar, for all these reasons of being, an island economy, with limited other, economic industries that they can really focus on, is leading the way here. But I think they're doing it in a very, very smart and very prudent manner, and especially, in partnership with, a company like Wasoko, which is, the largest company in East Africa, largest tech company in East Africa, the fastest growing company in Africa overall. This partnership, I think, just makes a lot of sense for all those reasons.
Just for me to have a kind of like an understanding of what the hub, in terms of its size, how how much investment is going into it and how many people will you be able to accommodate, to have a visual of it. Can you just explain that?
Yeah, so I mean, so far we've committed to investing $10 million here, and building this up to being over 500 people just on the Wasoko side. Of course, that'll take place, over a few years. But and that's just us as Wasoko. I believe that over time and even quite soon, we'll be attracting hopefully many more companies to come here as well, set up bases and be investing. And as I said, for an island economy like Zanzibar, I think that'll have an enormous impact.
Yeah. I mean, I want to ask you about kind of like the funding environment overall for the continent, and also specific questions to you. But I want us to go just for like a moment, go back to the nitty-gritties of running an e-commerce platform, and I just want to get your views on how you approach running an e-commerce platform on the continent. Kind of like, are you looking at it like an overall integration of the whole from bottom up? Do you want to own everything? Do you want to run everything? Are you rural? Are you urban? How do you approach that?
Sure. Sure. So, Wasoko is a fully integrated operating model. So we have our own logistics, we have our own warehousing, and we do, our own direct procurement from the manufacturers to get the goods. In terms of our focus environment, it is urban, or kind of urban and peri-urban a bit, to get out within the routes, but generally speaking, say within 40-50 kilometers of city centers. And the reason for that is because of the required productivity on the delivery economics, right? If you're delivering to shops in the village, but it takes you 3 hours to get to the village, and you're only delivering to 2 shops there, and then you have to drive all the way back, that's a whole truck, a whole vehicle that's held up the whole day, and you're not getting the productivity that you need on that. For us, right now, the average vehicle is delivering over 30 orders a day. So in order to get that kind of productivity, you need to have the density of shops in the urban area. And I think just in terms of just the rapid urbanization of African cities overall, this is also clearly the place to focus, right? I mean, this is where incomes are rising the highest, this is where population is growing the fastest, and where informal retail is the most present. So that's how we focus. And I think to answer the question of like, why do we have fully integrated operations versus kind of potentially the quote unquote third party or asset light approach, the answer is this came out of necessity. In fact, when we first came to market, my background is as a software developer, and the initial idea was in fact to be a asset light software only, platform only solution, whereby shops would use our tech to place their orders, and then suppliers had basically a portal where they could see the orders come in and be able to go out and deliver them themselves. What we very quickly discovered, and this is we're talking over 6 years ago at this point, was that the on-demand distribution capacity of the suppliers or their distributors was simply not there. And you in order, the most important thing to build trust in your services as an e-commerce company is reliable delivery. And if a customer orders products but they don't come, then that destroys your relationship with the customer and defeats the whole purpose of the value proposition. And you only have to mess that up once to basically lose the customer forever. And I think what we realized is, in this environment where, these external parties, be it a distributor or who else, can simply not be trusted, that the only way that we could ensure that, 100% or 99.9%, delivery commitment is to do it ourselves. And in fact, so that's why we went down that direction originally. But I would say, in fact, now this is our greatest advantage and our biggest moat, because I don't know of any other e-commerce or logistics company out there that has their vehicles doing 30 deliveries a day. This is an enormous kind of amount of productivity, and it takes a lot of good operations and tech to actually make that kind of efficiency happen. And for us, the fact that we have done that, we've fully mapped out where all of these mom and pop stores are. We have the algorithms and the routing engine to be able to properly allocate and do these kinds of deliveries. I think is a huge advantage that anybody who comes in kind of quote unquote with a third party approach, where they try to just kind of outsource the logistics and they say, hey, here are your deliveries, like make sure that the stuff gets to these shops. I just don't see them coming close to kind of our level of reliability with our customers.
And kind of on the same question, how in the 6 markets that you're in, how do the margins kind of vary, and where do you see opportunities?
Yeah, so I mean, generally speaking, our margins are higher in our more established markets, which makes sense because we have bigger volumes there. We've had longer term relationships with those suppliers, and so we've been able to negotiate with them over time. Newer markets are still ramping up, but we are seeing I think a kind of similar trajectory in terms of the margins, and so we expect that we will be seeing profitable economics there in the long term as well. And yeah, I mean, I think overall we are on track to have all of our operations delivering orders profitably within the next 12 months, actually. So we're in a very good place overall, as a business.
I mean, that is impressive, because you don't get to hear a lot of startups saying that they'll be profitable that soon. Like, I guess 7 years is not a short period of time, but still.
Yeah. And
to
clarify that'll be profitable at the country level, not profitable at the full group level. And the distinction there is basically that at the group level, we'll still be investing in our engineers and more of these tech guys and management, stuff like that. But at the operating level, the idea or the target is to be profitable, by the end of 2023.
Okay. And then lastly, are you back in the market raising again? And with that, kind of like, let's talk about the whole Africa space.
Yeah. So, in terms of, currently we're very much still doing fine in terms of our cash balance. But it is interesting. We have had, we have been approached by investors, even still, despite the market downturn, who are still very interested in how they can get involved, when we will raise funds next. Interestingly, we've also been approached by investors who are interested in working with us to specifically acquire, and consolidate other companies within the market. So I think,
what do you mean?
So basically, Wasoko is now, one of the largest tech companies, on the continent, certainly in our space, kind of e-commerce, apart from Jumia, which I think is more of a, plateaued and not really seeing, much growth day to day. We're I think kind of very representative of what I think is the new wave of e-commerce, and really the mass market e-commerce, if you could say that, which is, I think B2B, reaching the mom and pop store, which is where, over 90% of all goods in Africa are bought and sold. This is really how you reach the mass market as opposed to, the B2C approach. And so, for us as, the market leader in that space, I think there's a lot of interest in how our company can potentially consolidate, acquire other players, both within our vertical. So other folks who might be doing B2B in different markets, but then also adjacent services. So other companies that might be offering tools or services that are serving these mom and pop stores as well, and could potentially be combined with our current offering. And so I think there are a lot of investors who are very interested in these types of consolidations, these kind of mergers or acquisitions that can kind of create an even more dominant player within the market. And they see the kind of clear value creation in that type of transaction, and that's something that I've been hearing or been solicited, I would say, more and more about. People asking, hey, what are our plans to do this? Have you considered acquiring this company? We'd be interested in giving you the funds, investing in you to then go acquire that type of company. So very, very interesting types of conversations like that have been happening. Yeah,
no, I think the consolidation and the M&A were expected to be the main topic for 2022. So I guess you're heading it, and
yeah,
unfortunately the whole global space has shifted. So maybe it's not happening as much as we would expect it to be happening. But yeah, Daniel, I think that was a very insightful conversation, and